Hello, welcome to FPL IQ. I'm FPL Rob, and I'm joined once again by the three musketeers: FPL Planner AU, which is Tien, Teach FPL, which is Lucian, and Ryan MS28, who still refuses to, for some reason, change his Twitter handle. Who football chat box? He's raising his finger.
So,
Yes.
so I went and looked after that day you told me, and someone has taken that handle. So I need to wait till that person, like the Twitter, maybe deletes the account for inactivity or something. But for now, I'm still on this.
What you mean? Someone's taken football chat box?
Yeah.
Secretly, it was me to teach you a lesson. That's what it was. But yeah, so today we're going to be going through a more relaxed one, a more sort of meta episode of looking at how we can improve as managers and mistakes we've made, lessons we've learned, because international break's always a good time to look back. I always feel like when we see content, we're just looking for the direct week in front of us and the last big player who just got a big haul, rather than sort of looking at what mistakes we've made in those first 1 to 8 game weeks. So we're going to look through lessons learned, mistakes made, and things that we've noticed. Review our player picks from game weeks 5, 6, 7, 8. So the 4 game weeks is what we do. And then we're going to have a look at some predictions and ideas between now and Christmas. So we're looking back and we are also looking forward. And then Q&A for any questions that anyone in the chat wants to ask us, any conundrums, any planning issues, transfers thing, anything just to end the show with. But yeah, that's going to be the idea for today. But we'll go around and see how everyone's doing. So Tien, we'll start with you. How are you finding the international break? Do you love it as much as I do?
I'm loving it because I don't have to think about FPL too much because I wildcarded last week. So very, very relaxed. Now enjoying it.
And another wildcarder and someone who shocked the group chat when he did go Haaland less. And it is Teacher FPL Lucian. No Haaland, but he's sitting down because the weight of pressure is upon his shoulders. How are you feeling, Lucian, after your wild card? Any regrets?
I think I'm just waiting for Haaland to be cheap enough so that I can buy him back for a lower price. I think the only question on my mind is who do I sacrifice? Because I think there was this thing I saw on Twitter, right, where um somebody said that if you own Haaland, Salah, Son, Madison, and Bukayo Saka, I think only 1.1% of all teams own him, and then if you add Trippier to that list, it becomes 0.2%. So I'm just like racking that combination in my head, and I'm just thinking to myself, unless I own a 5-4-1 of sorts, there is no way I'm owning that combination. So yeah, I'm just like looking to cool sell between Madison and Son, really.
Yeah,
About it.
we talked about that, and you two were wildcarding last week, and I was wildcarding the week before, and it's just not real. Something's got to give. So for Tien, it was, and someone I'll mention later, Son was the one who had to give. Saka is the one that I gave up on mine. It's just not possible. You'd have to have a silly formation, or you'd be starting like 4 million defenders, or like 4.5 million midfielders, or 5 million attack. You'd have to have like a weak player in your 11 like every single week, and it's just too much. And something that I think I talked about when we talk about our lessons learned. And Ryan, the only one of us who has yet to wildcard, how itchy is that trigger finger right now over that wildcard button?
I'm okay right now. Not thankfully there haven't been too many price rises, which is good. And I think we have all had this myth about so many price rises during international break, and it just never comes. It just never comes. But I'm all right. I'm enjoying the break, using it as a moment to reflect on what went wrong and all of that. But it is very itchy because I built a template draft and I'm like 0.0 in the bank. And I think Trippier rose today. So now I had to rechange. Yes, I had to rechange that now. I have to see where else I can make sacrifices.
You said game week 10 originally, right? So
yes, game week 10.
Yeah, like if you were on like a 0 now, there was no way that was going to stick for another 2 weeks, like literally 2, because it's a week off now, right? And then another game week, and then you're wildcarding after that. So Yeah, that would
But
have
that had
been.
double Arsenal mids in Odegaard and Saka in that midfield, so I can make sacrifices somewhere. So we'll see.
This just always feels like the issue of like everyone's jumped off it, and we can jump back on it now with free transfers when we get to game week 10. So Son becomes Saka, and Madison could become Odegaard, whereas you'd be wildcarding them back, kind of thing. So it's a bold move, but you can just see how different we are, right? Even though you two wildcarded last week, you had big differences, like Haaland, no Haaland, for example. I was the week before that, and mine was different, and then you're still holding yours. So it's a really good variety that we have as well. Not just in our thinking, but in our actual literal play styles. They're very different. So we'll start with lessons learned. So I'm just going to go with just a couple of quick ones. The first one for me, and it's something that I'm still learning and still trying to accept, and it's accepting and sacrificing certain game weeks and certain players, and not trying to think such a short-term, explosive bandwagon kind of players. And I did learn a little bit, and that was thanks to Tien, and Tien did his own version of this. So I was always planning to bring in Matoma in game week 10 when Brighton fixtures turn from game week 9, right? Because we've got City in game week 8, and then it's nice from game week 9. And because of injuries and stuff, I was going to bring someone in for a couple of weeks. And you know, Tien's point was, you know, yeah, he's got Liverpool and City, but Liverpool, he could, of course, do something against Trent. I know he didn't now in hindsight, but still, he could have. And City, yeah, that's difficult. That sucks. But it's one game week where, and I've said myself, he's a professional footballer. He can do it against anyone. Brighton can do it against anyone. For one game week, suck it up. And then you've got a transfer in the bank or money in the bank or whatever to get the next guy who's going to be in your team for 4+ weeks. Tien himself is the one who's sort of, and I quote, sacrifice here. He didn't go with Son against Luton because the thing that, and I'm not having a dig at content creators here, but when someone goes big, so when Sterling got the haul, all thumbnails and everything is like, oh my God, Sterling is the man. Right, Son gets the hat trick against Burnley. No one even looked at Son before he went into the number 9 and scored the goals against Burnley. Right, and then every thumbnail and everything like, you've got to get him on the watch list minimum. You've got to be looking to get this guy in your team, right? And it would have been so easy to sort of cave into that and for Tien to go and get Son on his wild card because he had Luton, right? And he could have captained him against Luton, but I was a week before, so I was always going to have, and I had Son the week before that as well. So I was always going to have Son for like 4 game weeks. But you were wildcarding in 7, and you were like, well, I'm going to sell him in 10 anyway. So do I just suck it up? And yeah, it sucks. I don't have him against Luton, but the player, who was the one that you went for instead? Salah, right? I mean, you must have sacrificed someone because I've got Salah as well as Son and Madison and that, but maybe like a Saka-esque player, right? Or someone that you've kept on your wild card that you don't have to now bring in game week 10.
Yeah, it's Bowen. Yeah, it's Bowen. So yeah, I think I'll just jump in if I can just quickly to explain that. Yeah, so yeah, basically, we all know that we can't have everyone, right? Because there's too many good players, and you can't fit them all in. So I pretty much made up my mind, like between the three big guys, Haaland, Salah, and Son. I would have to sacrifice one of them, and I think we discussed on our stream, right? I was without Salah for the majority of the week. But then on the Saturday, I was basically just flip-flopping between no Salah, no Haaland, and no Son. And I think at the end of the day, the key thing for me was that sort of longer-term look that I would be more likely to sell Son in game week 10 for Saka anyway. So that's gonna be like 2 game weeks of Son. But then Salah would be much longer term. And so then when I think about it, it's like if I have Son now and I sell him again with 10, then pretty much I only have Haaland as the one premium. And then I don't have that sort of captaincy options to switch. So yeah, it's mainly come down to that. Like I never thought that Son was a bad option, especially against Luton. Because if I had Son, and if I kept him, I would have captained him. But yeah, so that was just mainly come down to that. So
So obviously it's easy to sit here and say that's such a big swing because you didn't get Son, who blanked, and you had Salah, and therefore you captained him. So it's like a huge point swing. But again, we step back from the result of that. But the idea that I'm talking about here is the decision was made that you knew it was going to be tough against Luton. Of course, we didn't predict a stupid second yellow card for diving for Basuma. And the fact that in the first 10 minutes, Spurs could have had probably 3 goals. You know, you in the first 10 minutes of that game, you must have just been like, oh, just hold on for this game week. It's fine. Son can go crazy now, but the setup that you had and the players that you had, that sets you up long term. So, yeah, the lesson for me is like it's trying to resist those short-term explosive bandwagons and looking at everything like this guy has got Luton this week and Wolves next week. Sorry, Lucian. Or this guy's got Sheffield United and whoever for these 2 game weeks, and then they've got like City, Newcastle, Villa, Crystal Palace the next 4 after that, who have, you know, really, really good defenses, but you had to bring that player in for those 2 games. And I think that's something that I still need to keep doing. Also, tactical transfers. Another reason why I like the Matoma one, and I hate playing the whole EO situation, but it is safety. So I'm happy with my rank right now. Like I'm like 260k, which is pretty solid for this time of the season, especially going up against a lot. And it feels like there's a lot of content creators, a lot of people around like the 1.5 plus million mark. So I'm pretty happy with where I am now. So I'm just also thinking, and I don't just mean the overall ownership, but around you. And I even said, I think I said it to you guys in our chat. I said I posted on Twitter that if there was one player I wanted to go big this week, I wanted it to be Matoma, because a lot of people sold him on wildcards or have been selling all the Brighton assets, but he's still like 40% owned. And that would have crippled a lot more people than me bringing in a player with like 5% ownership and having me get those points. It's kind of like it would have given me the points of Matoma and pushed me up, as well as crushing the rivals around me because they don't have Matoma, but everyone behind them did. So it was kind of an evil move. But just thinking also tactically, like we've said before, you don't need 11 differentials. You said, Lucian, you said at the start about owning, you know, some of the most popular players right now. If you own Trippier and Haaland and Salah and Son, it's probably very low ownership, but individually they're massively owned. So having that combination is what gives you the differential, and just having 1 or 2 in your 11 that give you the difference and push you forward. So yeah, tactically transferring and always just looking at your team and thinking, oh my God, I've got 6 of my players are away from home. 5 of them are against the top 4. Deal with it. Suck it up. Don't take hits. Don't go stupid just to bring in a person against Luton for 1 game week and another one against Sheffield, and then have them rot in your side because, you know, they play for United and Chelsea for that week kind of thing. Just deal with it. And the last one, just a little tongue-in-cheek, I want to thank AI tools this season, because the big thing this season has been whole like points predictions, AI, algorithm, you know, all these key buzzwords, and I've completely stayed away from it. And some of the biggest content creators and FPL people have just been following, like, oh, I'm going this guy, the computer says yes, the computer says no, and they're all like 1.5 million because you can look at stats and eye tests, but you start trusting algorithms and things when, there you go. Sucks to be you. So yeah, that's all I'm gonna do for lessons learned. I'm gonna jump this over to Tien now, and I'm gonna go run downstairs and go and get my coffee because it's finally here, guys. After we delayed it because I was waiting all this time, it's finally here. So Tien, I'll look at the document as also when I come back. I'll know whereabouts you are, but I'll only be like 2 minutes. So Tien, lessons
worries.
learned.
Thanks, Rob. So talk about some of these lessons already in the last sort of review episode after game week 4. And I think a lot of them still apply here. So the first one is fixtures are still king. And literally no one is fixture proof, including Haaland. And I think it's kind of being proven that there are people who are going without Haaland for this sort of difficult fixture run, right? So Lucian being one, and I know a lot of people out there on their wild card have removed Haaland and so on. And I think that's a fair play because you can play the fixtures and you know the risk, but it's a calculated risk, and you hope that the other guys who have much more favorable fixtures can match or outscore Haaland. Now, what we've learned from the last couple of weeks as well is that Man City are not the same without Rodri. So that kind of added to the Haaland struggling a little bit, because basically he was very limited in attack against Wolves and Arsenal. But saying that though, I think we shouldn't be surprised if Man City and Haaland will turn around very quickly now that Rodri is back as well, and they play very leaky Brighton and United next. So for those who are brave enough to go without Haaland, I think just hopefully that if you've got a plan and try not to be too reactive with the outcome because you know what can be coming. And the second lesson learned is still around like picking proven assets from good teams, and try to choose the right fixtures, the good fixtures, and try to stay away from picking the second tier covers unless absolutely have to. Now, of course, sometimes budget is limited, and you can't go with the first choice for every team, but stick with the ones that are clear first choices for each team. The prime examples are Trippier and Salah, right? I think people try to go cover with other Newcastle defenders. I don't think any of them can cover Trippier. And similarly, using the like of Diaz or Darwin Núñez to cover Salah is probably not a good idea. Probably a good idea is to double up. If you think that their fixtures are really good, then instead of covering, double up is probably the way to go. The third lesson was picking the right time to hop on and hop off is absolutely crucial. So Rob mentioned earlier about AI and algorithms. I've decided this season to stay off completely. So I haven't looked at any algorithms or AI or predicted points or anything in my decision making. And I think it's early days, but I think it helped me to jump on to Sterling early. I think I jump on Trippier kind of early. And going without Son is another one that if I looked at any AI or algorithm or predicted point suggested sites, they would always say that you gotta get Son. So it kind of like free me from sort of looking at those and being influenced by those sort of computerized system. I'm not saying that they're bad, but it's just not something for me, and I try to stick with my guts more. And I think just sometimes it just jump on a player just 1 week early is enough. Because I remember when I got Sterling in game week 3, he was like 1 point something% owned. So I got all his points. And then the following week he was 40-something% on. Like similarly with Trippier as well. Like just like one more week after his 18 points haul, then the ownership like jump up massively. And sometimes that's all you need. Just like that's 1 week early to hop something. And then hopping off is also very important. Like, know when to jump off a player. And I'm just talking about Trippier as well. Like a lot of people are still trying to bring him in. I'm already thinking about when to sell him. It could be as early as game week 10 or 11. Because that, to me, is probably the right time to think about switching to something else. Giving players enough time. So we talked about it a lot on our channel, right? You don't just bring in a player for 1 week. Give them at least 3 or 4 or 5 weeks. Be patient is the key. It's been proven to in some cases, but not all. So people who've kept like Sterling or Watkins have been rewarded, but then people who've kept Jacksons or Mbomo
I'd say.
or Rashford as they it didn't work. So I think that the lesson to be learned there is still backing yourself, like asking yourself why you picked that player in the first place and reassess whether situations have changed, and backing your eye test or your gut or whatever. And sometimes results don't go the way, but I think just like so be it. You can't win them all. And then finally, I think we've learned a lot more compared to the first 4 game weeks. I think we've learned a lot more about how teams are shaping up. So United are terrible, both in attack and defense. But don't sell them before Sheffield United. You'll be mad to sell any attacking asset against Sheffield United. Obviously, unless on wildcard, you could make a case to sell them on wildcard, but on a free transfer, I wouldn't suggest to sell either Rashford or Bruno. They are good attacking teams like Newcastle's and Liverpool, Brighton, Spurs, Villa, and Arsenal as well. They're all pretty good. So I think they've been proven to the team to go for with their fixtures. We've learned that Son continues to play up front, but the Spurs squad is very thin. So if something happened, like an injury or a red card, then they are not the same. And Richarlison is still pretty horrible. We know the City struggle with Rodri, but he's now back. So expect their form to turn. Alvarez has proven to be such a great option to double up with Haaland. And finally, they are clear team to targets in terms of when you have attacking assets against them. So Sheffield United, Burnley, Bournemouth, Luton, Fulham, and maybe even Brighton as well. So I think there's some clear patterns that we can rely on for the near future. So those are some of the things that I've learned in the last few game weeks.
Yeah, I like this because I can just sit back and eat and listen to you guys like a viewer. So I like the similar to what I said about the tactical transfers and jumping on and off. It's so important. It's probably what's going to give you the most success. It's just trying to find the skills and the tools to analyze when is that time. That's sort of the $1 million question. And interesting you say about and I completely agree. A lot of people wildcarding now. When we had the graphic before about the pros and cons about game week 7, 8, 9, 10 wildcard from under the radar, right? Their graphic was really good, and now's a very popular time to wildcard. It's an international break. And it would be so tough to sell them before Sheffield United. But remember, I had Rashford and Bruno start the season with, and I sold Bruno in game week 2 to Diaby because I knew I was going to get stuck in that situation that if I didn't sell him in game week 2, I was going to have to hold him for Nottingham Forest. And then I was gonna, because the thing with United's fixtures, it was like good, bad, good, bad, good, bad, and then you're stuck in that situation of you're holding for Sheffield United, and say Bruno gets an assist, and then the next fixtures come up, and it's like, I've got the next game week he's got this. You know, that's a really big problem with Manchester United, because it always still feels so. They've got City, they've got Sheffield United, so you're like, don't sell, don't sell. Then they've got Man City. Then they've got Fulham and Luton and Everton. So the problem that you've got is, if you got off them ages ago, then you just stay off them, or maybe even bring one back. But if you're in a wild card, it's so difficult because they're getting an absolute pounding. Rashford's getting hold. I would just be on Bruno. But then you've got to say, well, who do you prefer right now? Do you prefer Bruno or do you prefer Maddison? Or Saka from game week 10? You prefer those players to the United ones, but that's the issue that you've got. So if you don't get rid of him now, and then it's Man City, but then Fulham, Luton, and Everton are next. But then it's Newcastle and Chelsea. So it's United is difficult. Like it's a tough but reasonable sell, because there's the key thing that I still can't accept in my heart is you can't have them all. And I want them all. Like, I don't particularly want Saka, but his fixtures and everything, he's ticked along so well this season. And from game week 10, like, you can't not, because it's almost like rank suicide at that level if you don't have Saka from game week 10. But all key agreeable points. Ryan, we'll jump over to you next. Your lessons learned.
Okay, so yesterday I used the time to go through and look at like all the moves I did, like how my team shaped up from 1 to 8. And there were a few things that kept on reoccurring, and I think you've touched on with regards to United and whatnot. And one of the main things was, don't let bias affect your decision. And I feel like this came with like United quite a lot in terms of, you just mentioned the fixtures, right? They had like this bad, then good, good, bad, good, good. And you're like, every time they face these good fixtures, I go, they can't be shit. They can't be bad. Surely Rashford will get something. Surely Onana will keep a clean sheet. Surely they won't be this bad. And then every week they just disappoint you. And I've got to the stage where there were parts where I was like, I should have another part of like lessons learned for like address the weak link first. And there were situations where I sold Saka ahead of Rashford in game week 8. Maybe looking back at it now, probably should have sold Rashford, even though Saka had that injury doubt. So that was one. Then the other thing I realized is trust your gut. That's something that I think we say easily, but sometimes we worry too much with regards to like EO, Twitter bubble, even just watching different content. You could go like, this person said this, and you go, you start a second question yourself, and like, why did you even come up with that decision when you like listening to someone else instead? So trust your gut, I guess, is something else that I realized. And then players who are on your troll list are there for a reason. So I had Mbeumo on my troll list last season. I was like, I swear I would not go and get this guy. But then he started off really great in the first 2 game weeks. And then I went and got him in game week 3. He returned in game week 4, but after that, he's just been shit. I keep looking back at it. I'm like, why did I even go and get this guy? I knew this guy was going to be like this, and I still went and got him. So that's something else, I guess, that I should probably maintain, that players who are on your troll list are there for a reason. Thank God Mahrez is no longer in the Premier League, but yeah. So yeah, those are some of the few things, I guess, that I've learned so far.
How many people do you think would have brought Mahrez in with like the De Bruyne injury and like Foden and Grealish out, losing straight away? Yeah, I would have, because he would have been probably 7 million. I loved Mahrez as an FPL option.
And Don.
No. Who's he remind? Do you know who he reminds me a bit of recently? Darwin Núñez. Darwin Núñez,
Yes.
when he starts, doesn't do anything, doesn't do a lot. But when he comes off the bench, you're asking yourself, why is this guy not starting? This guy's incredible. Like, he's come on for 30 minutes. He's just scored 2, set up 1. Like, what? And then he starts the next game, and then about 60 minutes in, you're like, get this guy off. Oh, my word. What is he doing? That's what he reminds me of. That's how I feel about Darwin Núñez. Like, invisible if he starts, but if he comes off the bench, he's up for, like, the Golden Boot or Ballon d'Or or something. It's like, he should be starting every game. But yeah, trust in your gut.
And one final thing I mentioned, the Pokemon reference I stated last week as well. You want to catch them all, but you can't. You have only 15 Pokeballs. So, like I think Game Week 10 will look at a lot of people sharing their wildcard drafts and midfield. I'm like, look at this midfield 5 that I have. It's so amazing. Yes, it's so amazing. But you also have another couple midfield options that are also equally amazing. So keep that in mind. You just can't get them all.
Or their defense will be like Trusty, Baldock, Bayer,
yeah, exactly,
Kapore every week. I've always been tempted by that kind of play. By just like sacking off the defense or sacking off the forwards and just having like every other position be great. But that's the tough one, just dealing with not being able to have all the players and just accepting that they're going to score points against you and just hope your players get more. I think an issue that I've had that I don't think Lucian and Tien have is I do feel like I've sacrificed more. Like, I started the season with a bench boost, but I liked having rotation options. I like having bench options. I've taken that away from myself. I was unlucky. Botman got ruled out for a month, and then Diaby hurt his back in the first game. And I had no bench. But if that would have happened, if I didn't have all the big hitters or I sacrificed one of them, I'd have gone into every game week with a comfortable defense, a comfortable midfield, and a good backup for my striker. So, something that I feel like I've learned, but we've talked before that we don't really need that much of a bench because there's so many minutes added on and there's so many subs to make in a game that even if your player doesn't start, there's always a huge chance, especially if it's a midfielder or forward, that they're going to come on anyway. So there's always that. Lucien, I love the first sentence of your notes here, which just says, don't do stupid things. So the lessons, what are the lessons and things that you've learned for the last 8 game weeks?
Yeah, I mean, I was looking at that because when Ryan said he brought up his transfer history, I just had to look through mine. I really did. I mean, I've got to face my best transfers, my best moves, and my worst mistakes, right? So, I'll let you guys judge, right, whether my moves, apart from my recommendations, were good enough. Game week 5, I sold Wisa to buy Julian Alvarez. Don't do stupid things. I also took a hit to sell an injured Chukwuemeka to buy Pape Matar Sarr as first bench cover. Right? So again, I'm going to repeat that line, don't do stupid things.
That's the Spurs player,
yeah? Yeah. Game week 6, I sold Chilwell for Trippier. This was right before the 8-0. I also sold an injured Serge Aurier for Fabian Schär. So that was also for -4. So don't do stupid things. Because still debatable whether Schär was, a move worth making. Because Tarkowski would have come on. Anyway,
for his 14-pointer, right?
Yeah. Game week 7, I sold Jason Steele for Areola, who got a clean sheet against Sheffield United. And then I took a hit to sell a suspended Nicholas Jackson for Jacob Brown. Double game week. So don't do stupid things. It's quite amazing. It's quite amazing when you can have one reasonable, sensible, good move, and you follow it up by, for whatever reason that you have, right? And I did have my reasonings, but it was all extra. It was me taking a punt, and in some cases, I barely made cover. Buying Fabian Schär, and then in some cases, it just didn't work out. So, I mean, I'm just trying to find a lesson from all of this, right? And a lot of it came down to what we identified from the first 4 game weeks as targeting weak teams. Because during the first international break, we talked about how the league is separating into a top 10 versus bottom 10 sort of dynamic. And I think it's safe to say that after 6 games ish, we have identified the 3 promoted teams alongside Bournemouth and Everton as potential relegation candidates. I don't think anyone else is in the conversation, right? Does Wolves count anymore? No, right?
Nah,
Maybe.
good manager. Probably not.
I don't dare say. So, but yeah, okay, those 5 are definitely confirmed, and I'm pretty sure Forest and Wolves are like barely above them. Yeah, let's just agree to that. So I did a little bit of digging in terms of the top 10 versus bottom, or at least top 10 versus bottom 5 in terms of matchups, right? Looking through the past 4 game weeks. And it, I mean, I don't know if anyone's peeked at my notes yet, right? But it has to be said, right? Out there were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 matchups. 11 matchups between the supposed top 10 that are above Brentford, so this doesn't include Brentford, versus the bottom 5. Okay, there were 11 matches. Guess how many matches did not end up in a win for the favorite?
I'm gonna say not many.
Yeah, out of 11. Out of 11, how many matches do you think ended up not as a win for the heavy favorite?
3.
0.
Okay.
1, 2.
Okay. The answer is Bournemouth 0-0 Chelsea. And that's it.
What about Forest beating
Forest
Chelsea?
doesn't count, remember? Like Forest,
Oh,
Forest
yeah,
is
about the
outside
relegation
our bottom
ones.
5 now. Yeah. So the unfortunate thing here is that out of the remaining 10 wins, right, the only results that really convinced us were the Newcastle 8-0 win, the Arsenal 4-0 win, and arguably the 4-1 Chelsea win last game week. That's about it. Everything else has been absolutely terrible, from Spurs' 2-1 win against Sheffield United, United being Burnley 1-0. I mean, yeah, I've actually included results like Brighton 3-1 Bournemouth, Spurs 1-0 Luton. So when you back the favorite, I think the lesson here is to have a decent spread of players that can give you, the guaranteed 6 to 8 pointers, as well as players that can potentially get, like, I don't know, double digits, like Sun, right? And you mix it up. You mix it up in that sense, so that in any scenario, right, even though you have one big player that blanks, you can also bank on the fact that you have an Udogi or a Pedro Porro at the side that will guarantee you some sort of, stable 6 to 8 points return. So that would be, yeah, play the numbers game and mix it up. Mix it up between guaranteed 6 to 8 pointers as well as potential double digits. Don't go like 3 double digits, unless it's Man City.
Cool. So a lot of the things that we're saying are like sort of easier said than done. So what we do on the stream, if you guys join for normal streams, is like, for example, when we look at the matchups, we explain in football terms, but we also explain in FPL terms. So just one example is a reason why I said I brought Matoma in early, why I said it was acceptable, is because we knew he was going to be against either Trent or Gomez down sort of the right-hand side. And why Salah was a good option for captaincy and to bring in was because we knew Estupinian was out, and we weren't too sure at the time when we streamed if Lamptey was going to be able to play. They were going to struggle down that side as well. So what we're saying is, like, it's not just saying, oh, look for the easy points here, but people need to, I think, spend a bit more time. I've said before about how precious transfers are, is to really analyze and trust the players that you're bringing in and hold on to them, because I think sometimes you just see someone quickly mention something, or you watch a video and you say, oh yeah, I'll bring him in, but actually do it yourself, right? Like we all do. Like really look at who that player is going to be playing up against in the next game, or the next sort of 3 or 4 games. What sort of formation is it going to come across? What is historically that team? So, what was it, the Everton one or the Arsenal one? When I went against it, I was like, it's going to be low scoring. I don't know. Everton, Simon's just mentioned in the chat about Everton not that bad and they should have won specific games against like Fulham and Sheffield United. Completely agree. But everyone had that as like Arsenal like 5-0. I was like, no, I just think it's going to be like 0-0, 1-0. It's going to be Dyche is an old school English dinosaur manager that continental flair managers hate to go against, and that's what it is. So just really look more into it. And then you'll start to stop blaming things like variance and being unlucky or, oh, no one saw that, it was going to be like 0-0 Everton Arsenal. So like, oh, no one was going to think it was going to be that. But people did think that. And, you need to look more into it rather than just assuming that's the XG, that's what that content creator said, and that's the current league table, because Simon just said it perfectly in the chat, like Everton are low in the table, but you look at the individual games and how they've played, and they should have picked up a lot more points than what they have. So really enjoy it, savor it like a fine wine, your free transfer for the week, and really be confident to say, I've taken this player out because he's dropped or he's in bad form or he's getting subbed early or he's out of position or whatever, and I'm bringing this guy in who even against Man City played excellent, looked lively, good stats, looked like he could get something. So what could he do against Luton? Well, there you go, bring him in for that one. So anyway,
Can I just add one?
Yeah.
I'm gonna have an attempt trying to as Lucian asked, like what lessons can be learned from those transfers, right? And I think I touched on it before. It seems like your first move was spot on, like brilliant in all of those game weeks. But then the second move was the one that let you down. And I look at them, I would say none of them were necessary. None of the hits were necessary. So I touched on it before, right? It's wants versus needs. So those moves were was not need move. They're just like you were chasing, like, if you already got Alvarez, for example, you don't need an extra striker or hit, or you don't need a second Newcastle defender if you've already got Trippier, for example. It's looked like you try to chase that upside because you are looking at that fixture and say, that is the golden fixture I really want, and I really you think that you need an extra defender, but you don't. You want it, right? So and then it's for a hit as well. And if you sit down and often think about it, hits don't normally pay off very often.
Not for a centre back
like
anyway.
It's especially for a defender. Like you need a clean sheet to pay it off, right? So I think that's probably something that you can think about. Just before you hit that sort of to commit that second transfer, just say, well, do I actually need it? Because normally you don't, because if you've got a bench cover that can come on, even though it's a Kabore, playing Man City, it doesn't matter. It still could be a 1 or 2 point, right? And that's probably fine. And I think you've shown all the results of big team playing the teams to target, and it showed that what is it, 10 out of 14 or whatever.
Yes, 10 wins out of 11.
Yeah, out of 11 are not that massive wins that we always think they will be going into a game week. So and that's going to my another thing that I hold dear to my heart as well. And I recorrect my mistake with the wildcard is not tripling up on team. Because you're putting too many eggs into one basket. Like, even though it's a very good fixture, like I didn't triple up on Spurs. I didn't triple up on Liverpool. I didn't triple up on, even though like it's a plum fixture, but then looking long term, I've learned my lesson with the Chelsea. Like Chelsea had that brilliant fixture run. I,
dribbled up.
storm onto them, tripling up, and then it just burned me, just like many other managers as well. And then it take extra transfer to get rid of them. So it's not just about getting those players in and not getting the return. It's the transfer out to fix your errors as well. And transfers are precious, as you said. So so yeah, I think there's some good lessons to be learned there.
Yeah, I don't disagree. And again, we're not looking at the hindsight of taking the hit for Shaw, and then obviously Tarkovsky doesn't come off the bench. If you've got a bench, just use it and suck it up for the week. I used to take hits like candy every week. That's why my history is not my year history isn't always great, because I'll just be like Lucy and I'll just be like, right, I'm going to take -4 every week. Because it's a player I'll keep. If it's long term, then I understand. But we've already noted today that Newcastle defender wise, we're looking to maybe start selling from like game week 11. So you're looking at kind of like, is he going to pay off that -4 in sort of 3 weeks as a centre back? Maybe not. But it is what it is. So let's go and review our picks from game week 5, 6, 7, 8. So this one was me first because I'm the defender. I don't think we need to talk about it too much, guys, because this guy was penciled in for a lot of people in pre-season, because we all knew, and I even pinpointed it when I said about Newcastle when they played Brentford, that they were so close in the table. But the fact that Brentford had all the easy games, Newcastle had all the difficult games, he was penciled in for a lot of managers to bring in from game week 4, basically. My game week 5 pick was Trippier. He's got 8 points, 18 points, 12 points, and 6 points. So points wise, it's obviously a huge tick. But here, FPL IQ, we don't just look at the points and say, oh, someone got 40 points, but they had one crazy game where they got 30 points and the other they were rubbish. Trippier's a real deal. He punished a lot of people last season with high ownership. Going back to Tien's point about jumping off, people held Trippier too long because his ownership was so high. Wasn't he second last season behind Haaland? So a lot of us held on to it. Like, that's a fear a lot of us have let go this season when we've sold Saka, because Saka, I think, is second. Is Saka or Estupinian the second and third highest owned players? Estupinian's now all the way down to 34.7. So you can see that fear is gone, because Estupinian was like, what, 54% owned at the start of the season, maybe even higher, and now he's down to 34%. I know he's injured, but even pre-injury it was down. Saka's down to 49.7%, which is still incredibly high, but he was in the 60s, was he? Saka? 60s? 65, something like that. So of ownership has gone. Look, we know Trippier. He's on set pieces. The Newcastle fixtures were Brentford, Sheffield, Burnley, and West Ham. With West Ham being like the more difficult one because it was away from home. But he did end up getting an assist. Burnley, 2 promoted sides. Always felt a clean sheet was there, and then you're looking for additionals from his set pieces, which of course he went crazy at Sheffield, but he also got another assist against Burnley, and then Brentford was just a clean sheet, and he's a bonus point magnet. In fact, he got 2 bonus in the 2-2 against West Ham, so he's conceded 2 goals, and he still walked away with 2 bonus points. As a defender, conceded 2, so he got a minus for conceding 2 goals, and yet he still walked away with 2 out of the 3 bonus points. So, yeah, I'm not expecting anyone to be arguing against Trippier being a good call. I think, yeah, it's worked out pretty well. So we'll go to midfielder Lucian, and you had Maddison as your 5, 6, 7, 8 pick.
Well, I kept it simple. 4 returns in 4 games. I mean, it looks like it, doesn't it? So there was that stupid game against Sheffield United, where he did everything within his power, and he should have had a penalty won for Spurs, right, when the game was still in the balance. Anyway, that aside, he did register 2 assists against Arsenal. He had another set piece assist against Luton. I think the most important thing here is that whatever happens with Angie Ball, we at least know that Madison is going to be up there consistently with a 6 point floor. It is impossible to deny that at 7.5 million, Madison is like one of the most value for money, consistent point scorers in the game right now. We just cannot deny that. And I think that's what one of the nice things we love about James Madison. He's like literally fixture proof. I think Liverpool were unlucky to have Curtis Jones sent off because I'm pretty sure 11 against 11, James Madison would have performed so much better than the blank that he got against Liverpool. So, I mean, really, I am extremely reluctant to sell James Madison as of now because that's the only way I can afford Saka and Salah and Haaland in my team. I have still no idea how to figure this puzzle out. But I would chalk it up as a success because even if I am just short of the mark, 3 assists in 4 games is something that I think everyone will be happy with, considering how the 6.5 million midfielder bracket literally collapsed in 2 game weeks, right? Diaby, Mitoma, Burmo fell off the radar. There are not many 6.5 million midfielders left that can perform, at that 7.5 million bracket. Yeah. So I'm very happy. Very, very happy with James Madison. He will stay in my team unless he himself gets injured.
Well, he's 8.1 now, so he's gone up 0.6 million. But I love Madison. A lot of FPL managers love Madison. He was doing ridiculous numbers with Leicester when they were literally getting relegated. He's an incredible player. I had him in my FPL team before the season started, and I got rid of him when they got rid of Kane because I was so excited to see a Son, Kane, Madison team. Like, just, I know they're top of the table right now, which is fantastic. The attacking aspect of this side is incredible. Just imagine if Kane stuck around just for one more year in this side, to have this man put in the ball on an absolute platter for him. The big problem with Kane is he had to drop deep so many times to get it. Son had such an off season last season. And it was all down to Kane. Imagine if, Son's back this season, Kane there, Madison behind. Like, this team with Ange Ball would have just been dread to think who could have kept this team out. Like, who could have? They scored 2 goals away at Arsenal. Like, they kept even a clear. They scored 2 goals against Manchester United. Scored 2 goals against Liverpool. Who's going to keep this team out? And imagine if they had Kane as well. A real shame. But yeah, Madison, fantastic pick. Remember, guys, we chose these people 4 weeks ago. We're not doing it like right now. Like, oh, he's just done well against. No, we chose these players 4 weeks prior. So let's go to striker Callum Wilson.
Yes. So Wilson, in game week 5 or before game week 5, I had 3 reasons for picking Wilson. One is the fixtures were about to be really nice, right? So Brentford, Sheffield United, Burnley, and West Ham in the next 4. And Newcastle has gone on and won 3 out of the 4 games and drew 1. And they scored 13 goals in the process. So that was a tick. I also said with the tough Champions League and Carabao Cup fixtures sandwiched between these easier fixtures, I was punting that Wilson will start these easier league games. So Wilson did start the first 2 games, but of course, unfortunately, he went off injured. So perhaps we should have seen that coming because he does have a history of injury. And the final point was that Wilson has always put up great attacking stats whenever he was on the field, even coming on as a sub as well. So in the 2 games that he started, he played 90 and 69 minutes. He scored a goal each, and 1.06 and 1.18 XGI in those 2 games. So pretty much as expected. And we could even say that he was unlucky not to get more attacking returns in that 8-0 of Sheffield United. So in a way, most of the things that I was predicting kind of came true, but obviously the only thing that I was avoiding to talk about when I predicted him was the injury. That also came true. So I don't know, 12 points over 4 game weeks, but he basically only played 2 games, 2 returns. So
I'm not. It's not the point, because you're right that if this was a 2-game week pick, it's fine, but you usually end up bringing in the player that you pick, and I think, like, for me, I think this would be a cross. I think this would be a fail pick because of the 2 key reasons as to why we all don't have him in our team, and that would be because of minutes and injury. I've been waxed lyrical about Wilson before. I've said, like, he's probably like the best player in FPL if he A, gets minutes, and B, stays injury free. Like, he's up there. I've said it countless times before about, like, if you run back 38 games, like a full Premier League season where he's been fit, he's like the top scorer in the Premier League, and he's the most consistent scorer in FPL. But none of us have him in our team because of the minutes, because it's just too much competition. Even if he wasn't injured, which we think he always could be, there's always going to be the Isaac question until they put them up front as a 2, which they won't, because they'll have Almiron on one wing and Gordon on the other at the moment because Barnes is out, right? So they're never going to have a 2-man up front unless they're chasing the game, and that's when they throw him on. So he got the goals in the first when he played, and he didn't score obviously when he didn't play. He got 4 minutes against West Ham, which usually gets like 24 or 34 minutes, right? But just as a pick, I just think there's other players around there as a forward that you could have gone, like Watkins or Alvarez, but just that, that's we don't have him. Like, I have Trippier. I picked Trippier. Do we all have Trippier? Right, yeah. Ryan doesn't, but 3 of us do. Maddison. Do we all have Maddison?
Yeah.
Yep.
We all have Maddison. And we had these players weeks ago, because the first sort of few picks we had, we all were picking the same players because we were all bringing them in because we all felt that they were the good ones. So our eyes were on the prize. But I picked Isaac, which I think he's better with his minutes more than Wilson, but he gets injured a lot for his age as well. But yeah, I would just argue that the Wilson pick would have been a cross more than a tick, because none of us brought him in, because we know his minutes are a problem and we know his injuries are a problem. You can never say with injuries, because we've had players who get injured often and then they don't get injured again for a long time. I always felt sometimes Kane, was it his ankle that he always would hurt? Harry Kane, or his knee? I think it was his ankle. But then I can't remember for a long time. He's not been out for a long time. But yeah, I don't know what you guys think, but I personally would think this one would be a cross more than a tick, because none of us have him and we know it's minutes and injury.
I wouldn't put it as a cross. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, with Callum Wilson, you're never backing against his ability. You're not. You will never ever back against Wilson because of his ability. Nor do you back against him because of his team. You back against him because of his expected minutes. So I don't want to say it's a cop out. It's more of that. When you pick Wilson, you're just rolling dice hoping he doesn't get injured. It really is as simple as that, because he plays, he scores. That's it. I think the only thing I'd question would be what you miss out on. If you chose Wilson, it means that you'd be missing out on Haaland, Watkins, or Alvarez. Those are the 3 most popular forwards, and in double game week 7's case, Morris. So it just feels like Wilson's like the 5th, permanently the 4th or the 5th best pick in any given game week, even with that Sheffield United and Burnley back-to-back fixture, right? Because we all preferred Gordon despite the 4 yellows, and yeah, double Newcastle defense was probably one of the better plays, especially since we never considered that Newcastle can switch up their central midfield at will. That gave prominence, right, to the rise of Trippier in the first place. So I mean, if you can't foresee it, you can't foresee it. So be it. You just know that if your luck stops there for Callum Wilson, it just stops there.
Yeah, I think it was a calculated risk at the time because we knew with Europe they would rotate strikers, and it did work in the first 2 game weeks, and then the injury happened, and then after that it's just unlucky purely. So I don't know. I guess you could put it as a 50-50 transfer maybe, but like Lucien mentioned, depends on what you missed out on, and most likely that would be Alvarez or Watkins probably. But yeah, 50-50 for me probably.
Just I wanted to make this stat right. So this is ridiculous. Callum Wilson, since he's been in 2015-16 with Bournemouth, so in 7 years, because we're in the 7th season, right? If you round it to the whole 8 years, which is 2,920 days, right? Wilson has been injured for 753 of them. He's literally like 753 days injured, and I've gone like the full 8. We're not finished the 8th season, so I could take off like 100. So let's say 2,800 days, and he's been injured for 753 of them, like a third. It's insane. Like, that is a really, really bad injury record, and the issue that we've got is it's not like it's always like 2 weeks or 2 months. It's not just like a list of 20 or 30, like 2 days, 5 days, a knock here, a pull there. 260 days, 189 days, 49 days, 56 days, 48 days, 125 days, 35 days, a few 13s and 15 days in there. And 13 to 15 days, that's 2 to 4 matches in the Premier League, especially if it's around the Christmas period. So, yeah, there you go. Just to finish with Wilson, that injury record it's sad because he's so good. He's so clinical, but they fit.
I will add, it won't stop us from going back to him if ever the situation arises.
If Isaac gets injured, Wilson's in my team.
Yeah.
And I don't mean like, oh, Isaac's like, he's got a pull or a cold. Like, I mean, like, if we're looking like, Isaac's out for like 2 months or something, probably half of us on this, out of 4 of us, half of us are probably going to bring Wilson in, or find a way to bring him in. Maybe sell a midfield and go 3-4-3 or something like that, because he's that good. Speaking of not good though, let's go on to Ryan's wildcard pick. Hey, I had him. Tien, I think you had him. Lucien refused to have him. It's big man. Do I still have him? I still have him.
I still have him.
He's my first sub. I play 4-5-1, you see. Big man up front. The man. He played through blood, sweat, and tears against Tottenham Hotspur. Sadly, he plays for Luton Town. It's Carlton Morris. Defend yourself, Ryan.
So, 2, 9, 10 in the double game week, and then 1. Now, I purely did this at that time, purely on games, number of games. I was like, 5 games, 4 game weeks, 5.5 million budget striker. People had Joe Pedro issues at the time. I was like, yes, perfect replacement. And if you did captain him on the double game week, like I did, when everyone else went Haaland, I think for me, at least personally, it was a success because I captained him. and it worked out. And if I didn't captain him, I dare to even think about the score I might have had on that week. But yeah, for me, I think from a 5.5, you got him in for the double game week, and he did the business in the double game week, and that's all that mattered for me. So yeah,
I've already said I'm not rushing to get him out because he's a 5.5 million player who's a 90-minute man on penalties, and in terms of actually getting the points, he's the 5th best player in forward in FPL right now. He's 5th behind Isaac and ahead of Edward, ahead of Wisser, ahead of Ferguson. He's ahead of Wilson. He's 12 points clear of Callum Wilson. He's ahead of João Pedro, Gakpo, Jackson. I'm not against it. I think it was the right call, and Tien and I both had him for the double game week. And I wildcarded. I got rid of the goalkeeper Kaminsky, but I still had Kabore because number of fixtures. I like him. I still like him. He's an absolute talisman for the side. Yes, Luton suck, but if what was it? They've scored 4 goals. He scored 3 of them, and 2 of them have been penalties. But they're gonna get penalties. Lucian's shaking his head. You think it's a bad pick as a third striker on the bench for 5.5?
It's more of exactly what you said, Rob. 2 of them are penalties. I mean, okay, I think put it this way, right? Given the fact that Luton have had 3 penalties, 2 penalties, whatever it is, how many more penalties do you think Luton will get this season? Let's start
And
with that.
3.
One against Forest would be nice.
Well, hold
Okay,
on.
so that's yeah.
Why can Mbuemo score 2 penalties and he's the best thing since sliced bread? But
No one
Morris,
said so.
huh?
I don't think anyone has said so. No one has said that Mbeumo has
Are
been.
you kidding me? The start of this season,
Not among the 4 of us.
Oh,
Not among the 4 of us.
No,
Not among the 4 of us.
But that's why I did my tongue-in-cheek tweet about like, oh, it's all everyone's complaining about Mbuemo. It's like, oh, you're telling me that scoring penalties and 90+ minute goals isn't sustainable. But he's 5.5 million. Like, if you want a good starting striker, you've got to go minimum 7. Ferguson at 6 is still incredible, but we don't trust Brighton with De Zerbi, right? Because he's going to start. Pedro at 5.3 is incredible, but you can't trust him in your 11. So a move I'm considering making is just Morris down to Pedro, bring Pedro back, because he's just a benchman. I'm a 4-5-1 right now. And just risk Pedro for games where we get an idea he might start him. But I just think 5.5 million for a guy who plays 90 minutes. And he's the one they look for. He's also the talisman. He's not just the cheap striker. He is the main man at Luton. It's just a shame it's at Luton.
I mean, all I'd say, right, is that I think if you want to have Morris purely for the double game week, it makes sense. I think, Ryan, the question I want to pose to you is this, right? If you read those 4 scores, 2, 9, 10, and 1, if Morris performed as he was expected to and scored 2, 2, 10, 1, would you have been happy with that?
Yes, because I bought him in for the double game week. I captained him and he returned. That's it.
I think that's the key. Like what you expected, and if what you expected is what you get, then that's a success. And I think that's a success because I brought him in for the double game week, and I think before the double game week, I said one go across 2 games, go across 2 games, and likely that he'll get a couple bonus as well. That was exactly what he got. It's like, yep, that's exactly what I wanted.
Yeah, I mean, I do feel that the real gem in all of this should have been Lau Foster. Lau Foster was the real gem in this whole ordeal, and it's just a shame that he was suspended. Yeah, so so be it.
Agree.
But he's an option as well because we're talking about cheap prices. Like, you can go for a 5th defender for 5.5 or less, but like midfielders, you've got like Jensen, Han Hee-chan, Decore, Douglas Luiz, Souček. I'd rather have Morris, 90-minute man striker on penalties, and then forwards Edward, I was tripled up on Palace with it. Say like they're just not an attacking side. Forster is an option though at 5 million. If he is someone that, if they have a good run of fixtures and he's just going to sit on your bench, then why not? And Burnley are about to go on a very good green run. So if you are on a wild card, so for example, Ryan in game week 10, if you're having like a 3-5-2 and you don't want an Archer, because I've got Archer and Morris, right? But you don't want Archer because I was like, oh, I could do Archer away at Fulham. No, I'm starting Morris against Spurs because that's how little I trust Sheffield United and Archer. For 5 million, you're bringing him in for Bournemouth, Palace, Arsenal, yes. West Ham, Sheffield, Wolves, Brighton, Everton, Fulham. And some weeks you can start him if you don't want to play a fourth defender. Because, so for example, is it game week 11 when Newcastle have Arsenal? So maybe you play Trippier. If you've got Shaw and Trippier, right, and it's Arsenal, you could play Trippier because you can get an assist against anyone. But you bench Shaw, and then you can throw Foster against Bournemouth, right? It's not a crazy idea, and that's what I said. I regret earlier. If I'd have waited until after the game week, I would have got rid of Morris, saved myself 0.5 million, and brought in Foster as my guy to throw on in a tough defender game week because I play 4-5-1. So, all right, so going to talk about sort of Christmas predictions and plans. Just a quick one from me. I think Liverpool will sneak to number 1 because I was surprised. I know that they lost in a very controversial game against Spurs, but I think they've lost 1 in 17 or 18 games now. Defensive questions are still there, but their attack is still so good. I just think with the run that they're about to go on, that Liverpool are about to have with Everton, Forest, Luton, Brentford, and City are about to go on like the opposite of that with Brighton, United, Bournemouth, Chelsea, and then Liverpool, Spurs, Villa. And then they're going to blank as well on all these other fixtures. Liverpool, and I don't think Liverpool are taking Europe seriously, so they can rest them, whereas City are going to be fighting on that front. Then it's like the Club World Championships and the blanks and the doubles and all that. What's going to happen? I just think Liverpool's going to find themselves on the top because Spurs will still be attacking very well, but they'll stumble. And they've almost stumbled already 2 or 3 times. They got a last gasp winner against Sheffield United. They almost lost against Arsenal. They got arguably lucky against Liverpool with the whole offside goal, cards, so on. And they got lucky in a sense against Luton because they were down to 10 men for the whole second half, and Luton missed some big chances like Adebayo sliding in and not getting it, and I can't remember, was it Brown, the winger, who had like a completely open header, so I think Spurs having Maddison from game week 10 is enough. But I think attacking wise would be great. But Spurs have been on the edge already 2 or 3 times, and I think that's going to cost them. I think Chelsea will become more stable. Pochettino will get his grip on it, and the team will start to learn how to play together because a lot of them are new. And finally, the newly promoted sides will still be struggling. I don't see Company changing the way he wants to play with Burnley, despite having a weaker side. Luton just don't have the quality, and Sheffield United just don't have the quality. It's that simple. They don't have a unique. This isn't Sheffield United with that less quality, but such a unique game style of overlapping centre backs. They don't have that anymore. They're a more normal side with normal tactics, and the quality is not there. And Luton are just so far below in terms of quality. They arguably shouldn't have even got promoted from the Championship. But there you go. Yeah, that's my part. Tien, what are your Christmas up to halfway point, up to Christmas-ish?
Yeah, before I go, what's your predicted top 4 after game week 19 and
After
bottom
game
3?
week 19, well, the bottom 3 is just going to be the promoted sides.
Yeah.
So probably Sheffield United, Luton, Burnley. But you could rearrange that in any way that you want. top 4, I'm going to go Liverpool, City, Spurs. No, Liverpool, City, Arsenal, Spurs.
Okay, cool. I think I'm very similar, but I'll touch on that in a second. I agree with a lot of things that you've said. I think Liverpool will kick on and maintain their attacking form. I think they win games by just outscoring the opponents, and the fixtures are more favorable out of the top 4, and without Champions League, they can afford to rotate more in European games as well. Arsenal, I think Arsenal will kick on as well, despite having Champions League, because I think they're a very solid team. I also agree with you that Spurs will drop off. They play exciting football, but their squad is so thin, and their fixtures are gonna get a bit tougher soon as well. Although they don't have any European football, right? So that might help. But I think they will drop off from where they are now. Man City is a tough one because I think you can trust that Pep's gonna turn them around. But they do have relatively tougher fixtures compared to the other top 4 contenders. So, and they do have a blank in game week 18 as well. And finally, I think Newcastle is going to be a surprise package. They might sneak into top 4 by Christmas because they have very, very favorable fixtures and they are good both in attacks and defense. So my top 4, the only difference between my top 4 and top 4 is I have Newcastle instead of Spurs. So Liverpool, Arsenal, Man City, and Newcastle in the top 4. Same bottom 3 for me. And finally, Man United and Chelsea will continue to struggle.
Yeah, I think we're the only difference with I feel Chelsea become more stable, but I agree. I don't see United turning any corners with the manager and the style, and yeah, but Bruno's still fantastic FPL wise. Like I still think Bruno is someone that if you see him in an FPL side, you're like, well, 90-minute on penalties, set pieces, great player, can play in any team and be fantastic. But yeah, I'll mention.
He's a flat track bully, though.
Yeah, for the go. Well, they're about to the 4 of the next 5 fixtures.
Sheffield United.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
4 of the next 5 are wonderful. Sheffield, Fulham, Luton, and Everton. But again, we talk. Everton's not as easy as we think it is, right? Lucian.
Right, I'm just gonna keep things simple because I do believe that Europe, as much as we like to say that it hinders form in this stage of the season when there aren't too many key injuries, I do find that European football actually helps the team retain their momentum. It's kind of like if you know that you have a game in 3 days and the preparation is consistent, then you know that you are like prepping yourself every 3 games, play the same way, stick to your plan A. And I just find that the sides that are involved in Europe, right, besides teams that are in the Champions League, I'm referring to teams like Aston Villa, Brighton, West Ham, uh, and Liverpool in some sense because they're in Europa, right? That Thursday, Sunday form will actually help them only in this November period. I think they will suffer in December. But November is the time where they can time their European games in midweek alongside with their league games in the weekend and then rest everybody when the League Cup fixtures come around. That's usually when they take like that mini break in December and then go on that mad streak towards the end.
But just before you move on, a really interesting side note I think for that is also because like the likes of Brighton and Liverpool who rotate a lot, especially in Europe, I think it gives good match legs to other players that if there is an injury in the first 11 or you do want to throw on a sub to change the game, they've got match preparation rather than just chucking them on for the last 10 minutes. If they've done 90 minutes against CSKA Moscow or Sofia or AEK Athens or whoever they've had a 90-minute European match on Thursday for the last 2 weeks. Oh no, Soberslai's injured, Curtis Jones has to come in. Well, that's all right because he's played 2 games in 2 weeks because he played against 2 people in Europe and he's used to the system. He's not played 10 minutes in the last 2 months. He's played 2 90-minute games. So I do think that's a really good point as well for especially teams that rotate in Europe to give their second string match practice and match fitness, that if they do need to come on in the Premier League or they have to start because of suspensions or injuries, they've got match legs and match practice. So I think that's a cool thing to do.
So the next thing is that I think November and December we'll see all our strategies revolve around one very, very important player coming back from injury, the Belgian Prince KDB. I don't know what news is right now, but when KDB returns, I'm sure quite a number of us have already let go of Alvarez for the difficult fixtures. But you know how it is with Man City. There's just this thing about November and December where there's this myth surrounding rotation, right? But if you own arguably their starting 11, the rotation's actually a lot more minimal than we think. It's just about owning them through the fear, closing one eye on it, and finding the midfielder that reaps in all the points. This happens every season. Some seasons it's Gundogan when he has that advanced role. Some days it's Bernardo Silva. Some seasons it's Raheem Sterling. But you can go through the points season after season. You can claim that they make rotations. They might have an early sub. But the only player that reliably gets not used, right, when he's not starting, would be KDB himself. If there's any news of KDB being rested, it's almost confirmed that he will get rested. But everyone else should play majority of 90 minutes. And this is where the experienced managers will quickly catch on and buy the right Man City forward to take advantage and climb the ranks in November, December, despite fixtures. I think there is also something that we should look out for because of the gulf in quality and the severe underperformances of these managers. Sackings. I think manager sackings will happen really, really soon. And this is where new manager bounce comes in. And this is something that we should almost certainly prepare for middle of November. Last season, we were treated to the fact that literally every month a manager got sacked. This season, it's not happened yet, but you can almost foresee that any manager that doesn't perform, particularly, I think Iraola would be in danger if he loses a few more games. Yeah. And the moments new managers comes in, yeah, we'll have a lot more fun and a lot more debates. So those are the 3 things I'd say we should look out for.
Cool. And Ryan, what are your predictions and plans?
So predictions, I think Spurs will be all right. I don't think they will knock off too much. I think the knockoff is going to come after December when AFCON starts and Bissouma and Sa have to go for AFCON. I think that's where the trick in terms of falling might happen. I think because if you look at the fixtures between now and Christmas, a majority of their tough games, apart from maybe City and Brighton, are all at home. So home advantage should potentially play for it. So I think they should be fine. I still think they might drop a few points, which means they won't stay top of the table. The team that I probably think will improve the most will probably be West Ham. Really good run of fixtures between now till Christmas. And they're looking really good as well. So I think they should continue in the good form and probably climb up a bit more. So I think those are the 2 differences in terms of teams. United, I think they'll only improve if their injuries improve. And right now, with the entire injury chaos with that backline, I don't think they're going to improve until that improves. And yeah, I think Liverpool will do well. So if I was to pick a top 4, I put Arsenal on top. I think Arsenal are still more solid. I think Liverpool will have 1 or 2 hiccups down the road. And until the defense can keep a clean sheet, they can't keep a clean sheet. So until they're solid defensively, I don't think they'll be top of the table yet. So that's the one thing that they need to fix for that. So I'll go Arsenal, Liverpool, City, and Spurs in my top 4. That's how probably.
City 3rd then. So you think they'll?
Well, they'll win, but everyone else will also keep winning. The other 2. So because of that, there won't be much of a difference.
Okay, fair. So, no questions in the chat, but I'm going to end with one then. Before we go, last question: if I had to force you to keep one player, not Haaland, for the rest of the season right now, you had to lock it in, couldn't sell them, must play them every single week, which player would it be and why? So if you forced me to have a player in my side that's not Haaland, for the rest of the season, I'm not going to say Salah because maybe you want to spread the funds, right? I'm going to say Maddison. If you were to force me to keep a player in from now to the end of the season, because if he stays fit, I'd trust him to do anything against anyone. He's an assist machine. His away record is fantastic as well. And I'm a big fan of Ange Ball. I was criticising Spurs. I did not believe in Big Ange. I didn't think he had the experience. Coming with his own style. I think it's beautiful to watch. Probably the best team to watch right now. In terms of just not just like analytically, but just watching them for fun. I don't think I've watched a Spurs game this season and not been entertained and not enjoyed what I've been watching. So yeah, Maddison would be, if you force me, it would be Maddison. Tien, if I made you hold a player, right, even if you don't have him, but I made you buy him if you don't have him, and you must have this guy in your 11 for the remainder of the season, who would you have?
That'd be Salah.
Would be but so that'll lock you because you'll have Haaland and AFCON's coming up. So you couldn't spread his funds as well. So you would have 26.5 million locked for the rest of the season, unless you sold Haaland, which is very unlikely. You gonna stick with Salah?
Yeah, I'm sticking with Salah. I actually kept him throughout AFCON last time as well. Didn't work out well, but I did. I actually did keep him throughout the whole period. Yes.
Wow! Didn't they win it?
Yeah. So
he was away for the longest possible time.
He was away for like I think 4 games or something. I can't remember. But the thing is, the game that he came back, he missed a pen.
Yeah. But also the fact that you could have gone to someone else.
Well, yeah, that's true.
4 games.
But that's the thing. Like I was banking on that sort of early. It's like his ownership was very low in that first game, and he missed a pen. So I was like, okay,
this was perma cap season, Salah.
Yeah.
But that was 4 games. You could have gone somewhere else. Because he was there for as long as you possibly can, because he won it. Because it was him against Mane in the final, right? And then they won. Then they had to go and smile and hug again at Liverpool, which must have been awkward.
Yeah.
Ryan, who you keeping? You got to keep him all season.
So I can't say Maddison, or I can say Maddison.
Yeah, if you believe it.
Yeah, I think it probably will be Maddison, because just not only because he's like a trusted FPL pick, but also because I still think that without Europe, Spurs, even though it's a thin squad, that without Europe, it's a huge thing that will help them. And also one less cup competition now because they were knocked out from the Carabao Cup. So it does help them that it's like less injuries or less chances for injuries, hopefully. And he'll just continue to take over.
All about the Premier League and the FA Cup, right? So
yeah, basically.
No arguments here. I agree. Lucien?
So with my team now, I have queued up my next 3 transfers in. It's just a matter of whether I take a -4 at any point of time. I'm going to upgrade Darwin Núñez into Erling Haaland. And in order to fund that move, I have some money in the bank. But essentially, Son turns into a 4.5 million midfielder. The third move that I'm dying to do, and I wish I could have done it this week, I might do it next week, I don't know when I'll do it, is that I need to sell Luis Diaz for Bukayo Saka. Bukayo Saka has to stay in my team as soon as Game Week 10 begins, because it's just one of those players, right, where you have this thing called mysterious points where the tactics are against you, the stats are against you, and in some sense, even the player's confidence is against you because he's giving penalties away to his teammates. But you just know that he delivers without rhyme or reason and it doesn't follow a pattern. You need to have players like that where you irrationally own despite whatever you see and whatever you study. Bukayo Saka is one of those players that does not show up in the stats, nor the eye test, but he delivers much more consistently than Odegaard, than Martinelli, than Saliba even. And I cannot wait to buy Bukayo Saka as soon as possible over the Liverpool attackers.
That's why his stats, that's why his ownership was like 60-65%, and that's why he was clear of the others. Like, he's returned in every game except one. In that second game against Crystal Palace. I said earlier myself, like, he's the best tick-along player in FPL. He's the guy that'll get you 5 points every week. If you average, some weeks he'll blank and then he'll get like a 10-pointer, but on average, he's just a guy who'll just tick over and get you 5 or 6 every single week. So yeah, forced into having Saka for the whole season. He's nailed. He's a 90-minute man. Gets the odd injury, but seems to recover. We'll get told by Arteta he's broke his leg on Friday, and he'll be there in the training picture Saturday morning and starting on Sunday. But this time he did get injured. Did you guys see that he travelled and they thought he was going to start because Arteta was getting fed up with the leaks, especially after the whole Gabriel gate in game week 1? So he's like, "We'll tell you what, I'll bring everyone. I'm going to bring all. You'll have players getting wheeled in on wheelchairs, and they'll be like, oh, he's definitely out. And then they'll be playing, right? It's like, I got him on a wheelchair because I knew you'd all think he was going to be out. It's going to get to that level, and I don't blame the managers. If I was a manager of Arsenal, before the kickoff of the first game of the season, it was first game, right? I've made this specific brand new plan. I'm going to drop a guy who's played, I don't know, 80 games or 90 or whatever Gabriel had played in a row. I'm going to have this brand new style, inverted. Well, we don't like calling them inverted wing backs, but inverted wing backs from both sides. Oh, it's going to be, and then it gets leaked the day before you've dropped him. Like, you'd be absolutely furious. Like, you're going to get managers now doing silly things like that. Like, you're going to see Kevin De Bruyne in a Man City kit in the next game, like, warming up, like, really slowly, and everyone's like, oh my God, Kevin De Bruyne's back, and then he's just going to go home, and it's like, oh yeah, he's 3 weeks away from fitness, but we just put him on the pitch just to screw with any other managers or leakers or stuff like that, so I don't blame them. Good picks. Just think, the Salah shout, like, Salah is so good, like, he's an absolute legend of FPL, just the money would be an issue for me, and AFCON. Overall, great. So we'll be back next Thursday with our more traditional show. So hopefully people enjoyed it. Maybe leave a like and subscribe if you're new. Good to see people in the chat. Colm, welcome back. Simon, who's my friend, was around as well, which is nice. And Nez as well, who's been on the show herself. So thanks everyone for tuning in and watching. We hope you guys enjoyed it, and we hope to see you next week. So thanks a lot, guys. As always, have a good one. Bye-bye.
Yeah.